Coming to you from the TheEoNProject studios, parked high atop the banks of the majestic Blackstone River. Greetings from the jewel of the Blackstone Valley. You're listening to Experts of Nothing with Mike and Jay. Oh, hey there.
Good afternoon.
Oh, you got a hot mic there? You too loud or what?
Good afternoon to you.
Oh,
No, I got really close for that one.
You did.
Yeah, was it all distorted?
You're trying to sound all sexy like Barry White.
I do have a Barry White-esque appearance, mostly in the stature.
You're a little thick around the midsection, are you?
More than I should.
Oh,
Yeah.
How about below the belt?
Well, you know, this is a family program.
No, I meant your shoe size.
Oh.
You have abnormally large feet.
You know what they say about people with big shoes?
What's that?
They have big feet.
They do?
Yep.
Oh. You know, here on the TheEoNProject, not only do we strive to enlighten and educate, but also to frighten and laminate. In case you were just wondering, that's our new show slogan.
Oh, that's a new one because I had another one that I thought of on the way over here.
What'd you have?
So we dredge the depths of human experience to bring you the mucky, soft stuff that you step in when you go swimming in a lake.
You know, you had a maritime reference last week as well.
I did. Well, you know, it's summer, so you're thinking about the beach and boating and tubing.
You talked about barnacles.
I talked about barnacles of wonderfulness last week, yes.
What is a barnacle, you think? Is it?
It's a crustacean that adheres itself to the hull of ships.
Ooh.
And then you have to scrape it off erstwhile, or it will deviate you from your course. Because if they all build up, it'll.
So if there's too many barnacles on one side of the bottom of the ship,
correct.
It'll throw you off?
So they do what's called careening, which means that they roll the ship on its side while it's in shallow waters, and they scrape it off.
I didn't know you knew so much about
I watch a lot of pirate shows.
Naval things and such.
And naval lint.
Yeah. So what are we doing today?
Well, this week on the TheEoNProject, we have a very special program for you.
We do.
And we're going to get into that in a moment. Should we tease the topic?
Well, how about let's talk about what we did last week.
Yes.
We had a good response from that.
Yeah, last week we had.
program.
Last week. So last week was a follow-up episode to Grandma Betty's haunted house in Indiana. We had a special guest who told us all about living there, growing up in that area. It was very compelling, very interesting program. We got a lot of good response from it, a lot of good feedback.
Yep, that was Miss Tanika.
Yeah, she was a good guest.
Panman 51's actually sister. Mm-hmm. And actually, I've been given permission to use Panman's real name.
Oh, what is Panman's real name? The revealing.
It's Brent.
Oh, hi, Brent.
How did that sound?
That was perfect.
So I bring that up. Because I was speaking to Brent this past week, and he's in the music industry.
Oh.
So he introduced me to a new and up and coming band. Actually, they've been around for a few years, but they're still making headway in the music scene.
Okay.
And so we're gonna talk about them later because we love music here on the TheEoNProject.
Oh, yeah, especially new and upcoming groups.
So one of the new segments we're gonna do is we're gonna promote new and upcoming bands and try to get the word out there. So about halfway through the program, we're gonna do our normal break about halfway through, and we're gonna play a little music and we'll talk about that particular band.
Great. Well, before we get into our topic, I want to tell you a little bit about something that happened to me this week.
What happened?
So, and I may have mentioned this on the program before. Maybe I haven't. Maybe I haven't. I don't remember. However, I have done a little bit of acting in my day. You're aware of this. I don't think I've discussed it on the air. But this week I had a promising audition for a Hollywood movie.
You did.
I'm not going to discuss what it is, but it does star an A-list person.
Yep.
And so I went for my audition, and I wanted to tell you about it.
How'd that go for you?
Terrible. The audition was terrible. It
Yes.
was one of those times where I had no idea what I was doing. It was worthless. And just to give you a snapshot of how I believe it went or why I think it went poorly, was as soon as I walked into the audition room, the casting director got up and left as soon as she saw me.
Really?
And an assistant had to do the rest of the
isn't
audition.
that disappointing?
Yeah, because I automatically know that this is probably it for you.
Because you were primed to make your
you want to make a good impression, and the head person's in there, and then she just gets up and leaves, and then you go, oh.
So you didn't have a good audition.
No, but you know what? I met some cool people in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Because everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's a little bit nervous.
You make small talk with everybody.
You make small talk, and everybody's super nice and polite.
I was in a movie once.
Yeah.
A major motion picture event, and actually I bring this up, and I'm glad you mentioned it because it was on Cinemax last night, so I recorded it because I haven't seen it in a long time.
What movie is that?
It's a movie called Rules of Engagement with Tommy Lee Jones and Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson.
And some of you think this is a joke, and it's not. It actually happened to me.
Yes.
So when I was fortunate enough to be on active duty in the Marine Corps, and I was standing post one day, I was standing the gate.
Like a postman?
I was standing on the gate, and I was making sure that evildoers and terrorist sorts weren't making their way through the gate
And ne'er-do-wells.
attempting to blow up the base.
Or steal m.r.es.
So as I'm standing there, a vehicle was coming in the outbound lane and pulled over and stopped. So I thought they may have been in distress or needed some sort of help.
Right.
So I went over there, And it turned out that it was a casting agent, a casting director for a movie.
And he liked the cut of your jib.
He did. He stopped. He looked at me. He said, "Wow, you really fit the mold, my friend."
Wow.
And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, we're filming a movie here."
Wait.
Yeah.
You probably thought it was sexual at first.
I did.
It was some sort of sexual advance by some man.
I did. I got very excited about that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But no, seriously, he goes, "Hey, we're filming this military-themed movie not too far from here. Would you like to take part in this movie?" And of course, knowing me, I said yes.
Well, you know what happened was he just needed to fill some spots, and he saw a dude in a uniform. So
probably, but you know what? Right on the side of the road, he obviously being in uniform and on duty, he took my picture. I took a full body shot and a head shot of me.
Wow.
And he said, "Hey, come out for the auditions. Whenever that was."
Okay.
And I went out there.
And you went for an audition.
I did, and I was an extra in the movie.
Oh, so you were an extra? You auditioned to be an extra?
Well, I didn't really audition. I just kind of went there. Went there in uniform.
Yeah.
And I got to meet Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, you did? How was he?
I did. He was a great
I
dude.
like to hear stories about when people meet celebrities because so often you find out. You know what? I like to hear stories where they're nice people. You know who I heard was actually I have a really good friend who is in the haunted house business.
Yeah.
And she was at a recent conference. They have those haunted attractions and whatnot. Anyway, she was at one of those conferences and she met Norman Reedus from Walking Dead.
Oh, yeah.
And she said he was the nicest guy.
He looks angry.
That's right, but he apparently was a really nice guy. He took time to talk to everybody and took pictures and was not a jerk.
But you didn't let me finish my story about my being in that movie.
Yes.
So if you watch Rules of Engagement, the very final scene when Samuel L. Jackson is acquitted of all war crimes.
Well, thank you for those who didn't see the movie.
It's
you
old.
just gave it away.
Whatever. So he walks out of the courtroom and he walks across an open area, the parade deck. He walks by the flag and everything.
Right.
In this, of course, in movies they have to have troops milling about everywhere.
It always looks like there's a million
tanks
things
going by
on.
and Humvees and troops marching all over the place.
Right.
And I was in one of the formations in the back, and he walked by, and we saluted him as he walked by.
Well, that's exciting.
And I made $50 off the movie.
Hey, I think I remember that scene. And actually, didn't he break military protocol during that scene?
By doing what?
Didn't he walk between the unit commander and the unit? I think if I remember correctly, he was walking across and he walked between the unit, whoever was marching that platoon, and you can't do that.
I can't remember.
Anyway, you can't do that. You get beat up for that.
No.
Anyway.
Okay. Anyway, so let's. What are we doing today?
So today we have a special show because
we have a live guest.
Because we have a guest, and normally you just hear us drone on and on about stupid stuff like we just did for about 10 minutes. But now we have a special guest today. We're going to be discussing all manner of things related to aliens.
We're talking about the ones from out in the nether regions of the universe.
Extraterrestrial aliens,
yes.
not like from Mexico.
That's right. So I think what I'll do is I'll introduce our special guest here.
That sounds great.
Because I feel his eyes burning into my synapses.
Oh, he's here in the studio?
From the side of my dome.
He made it through security.
So all I'm going to say is his name is Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Joe's here, and Joe. What I'm going to do is, Joe, I want you to you're going to introduce yourself a little bit, talk as little or as much about yourself as you'd like, and we're just going to guide the discussion as we go, and maybe a little bit about your interest in the topic today at hand. Hello, Joe.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you have a sultry radio voice.
Yeah,
wow,
that was good.
I've been practicing.
It's so deep and booming. All right, just speak naturally, and you'll be good.
It's the only way.
Yeah.
So what brings you here today, Joe?
Well, I've discussed with one of the hosts in depth about the topic. As I always say, I look at the topic from the perspective of an anthropologist.
Ooh.
What that means is that essentially what makes sense. I'm not looking for wild conspiracies that are going to shock everyone, things that don't make sense. Like I always cite people that go on Howard Stern. Some of the things they talk about are a little too made up after the fact.
Right.
That's a little too much based on fantasy. So.
And they make way too much money. That's not us.
No, we don't. We make nothing.
Oh.
You're getting paid nothing today, by the way.
He's not getting paid?
No.
Oh.
There's other things besides money that have value.
I have some beef jerky you can have later. Besides that,
half-eaten.
A little protein.
Yeah. So so you're looking at it as you're not a scientist by any means. Oh, maybe you are. I don't know. Are you?
I guess I could give myself that title as an amateur scientist.
So you've studied things over the course of your life, and you look at it more from a like a scientific approach as opposed to a supernatural approach when it comes to aliens.
Exactly, and I always make the reference that, for example, if modern-day scientists were studying, let's say, a tribe in the Amazon or a lesser developed part of the world, how they would go about understanding their habits, how they developed. So looking at it like that, but from a reverse angle. So basically, if there are more advanced life forms outside of our solar system, if they were to study us.
Right.
So we can almost kind of take a step back and say, well, what would we do if we found a less advanced alien civilization, how would we proceed?
Right.
So you take those basic principles. It's almost like foreshadowing as to, what would they do if they found us. So that kind of almost gives away some of the possibilities. So again, it's not anything like, some of the stories you hear, or like an episode of X-Files that's like a huge conspiracy. It's like very basic in what makes sense. And that's what interests me, and that's what I've researched.
So I'll even take it a step beyond that, in the sense that I equate it to not necessarily like humans overlooking, a tribe in the Amazon, because the tribes in the Amazon are humans and they're self-aware and they can understand that people are observing them. I would almost look at it like, because I think some alien races and civilizations, which I do believe that they're out there, are so much more advanced than us, than that they'd be almost like we're like ants in an ant farm, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like you have an ant farm and you just watch the little worker ants, and they do a little thing, they dig the little tunnels and things, but they have no idea that you're there. The only way they'd know you're there is if you opened up the thing and you smashed them. You know what I mean?
So basically the only way we would know is if they interfered with something that we were doing. Basically, is what you're getting at.
Correct. If they made themselves known to us, which I think that they certainly have the technology to mask themselves from observation. I believe, and I think the times that people do, quote unquote, see things, I think that they're being allowed to be seen by them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, does that make sense?
So on that topic, if I may,
Sure.
One of the things to think about is how old a life form is. So, for example, if all life evolves at the same rate, give or take, 1 billion years ago, what do you gentlemen think was the most evolved life form on the planet?
Probably like an amoeba of some kind.
Yeah, a little more than that. Bacteria, basic bacteria. So using that principle, if there's an alien species out there from another part of the universe that's, let's say, evolved a long time ago before us, let's say 8 billion years ago. So if they're a billion years more advanced than us, technologically and an evolutionary standpoint, where would they be? So let's compare a simple bacteria to a human.
Right.
And using that comparison, what's the next, phase of evolution? How much more advanced is a human to simple bacteria? A billion times more advanced? So what would a life form that's that much more advanced than us be like? Well, the whole thing is that we wouldn't know.
Right.
Maybe they're non-corporeal. They exist as pure energy.
Hold on, non-corporeal.
Right.
This guy's smarter than us, and I'm
What does
starting to
that
get
What does
worried.
that mean? I've
So,
never heard that word before.
Corporeal is what we know life to be. We exist in a physical, mortal body. Non-corporeal would be like almost like the Force, like you exist beyond the limitations of your own body.
Like you're like a spirit.
Yeah, like you're a
some kind.
ghost.
So what he's saying right now is that Star Wars is real.
It is.
That's what I just got from this.
Yeah.
Yes,
Very exciting.
I will stand by that.
Very
Yes.
exciting.
So, or in a billion years, life can evolve past any form of evolution, and they can go into supercomputers, or who knows? They could be massive life forms that who knows? It's beyond our comprehension. It'd be like trying to teach algebra to a mouse.
Right.
We can't figure it out.
Exactly. And
So they
I'm-
could be exactly all around us, flying around
Right.
us, and we wouldn't even know how to see them. So.
Right, and it's when you look at the numbers in terms of the universe as far as stars and planets out there, it's simply mind-boggling, and only what we actually can observe in the known galaxy and the known universe. I think there's something like 100 billion stars in our own galaxy, and then there's like 100 billion stars in the known universe. So, I mean, it's almost like it's not infinite, but it's pretty darn close if you start multiplying how many planets around the stars that are out there. So it's mind-boggling to think what actually could be out in the universe.
Well, you just touched on something that's important, though, and a lot of that is theoretical. So they theorize that there is this many stars and this many galaxies, but you actually can't verify that. That's not something that's verifiable. We don't have the technology.
Well,
to
what
do
they
that.
do is, through the Hubble telescope and things, they'll center in on a portion of the night sky, and they can, through calculations, and see how much is in this particular square, how many stars are in this square, and then they can, figure that out mathematically, how many would be in the actual galaxy.
Well, to go back to what we talked about a few weeks ago, then how would you talk to the flat earthers about everything like that? That supposedly all of the stars are just holes in a giant dome that is above the Earth. So
They're flat earthers.
Yeah, we're not going to give that any credence
No.
today. Huh. Okay, well then this is an interesting introduction to this topic.
Yes.
So my question is this, just based on that brief introduction. So how do we then explain instances in the past, and the UFO extraterrestrial phenomenon is really only about 10 70 years old, something along
The
those
modern
lines.
phenomenon, yeah.
Right, the modern phenomenon. Yes, thank you. Good point. So, how do we explain instances where people have seen UFOs or encountered aliens supposedly and met with them and so on and so forth, if they are such an advanced species that they could stay cloaked or hiding? How do we explain those?
I think, as I said, and maybe Joe has a different take on this, but I feel like any advanced civilization that may be coming to Earth and observing us or interacting with us, when they are seen, I think it's because they want to be seen.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Do you understand?
No, I understand that, but what I'm saying is, okay, so let's go back to the epicenter of UFO topics of the modern era, which would be the Roswell incident, 1947. So supposedly a UFO crashed. Now, would this be an instance where their technology failed, and because of that, that's the only reason we were able to recover an aircraft or recover bodies or whatever the case may have happened? So is that what took place? There was a technological mishap which allowed us to do that.
I think I'm gonna defer to Joe on this and let him talk a little bit about Roswell before I give you my opinion on the Roswell incident. So if you want to give a quick
Thank you.
overview of that particular incident.
So one of the reasons why people believe that UFO sightings skyrocketed, like you said, 70 years ago, is of course because of World War II. For a couple of reasons. Number one, here's an aggressive species. We kill ourselves by the millions. You'd want to keep an eye on a species that does that. If they kill themselves, they're certainly going to eventually try to kill you.
Right.
And so after World War II and during, we emerged with some technologies that were almost like the next stage in evolution for a species. Splitting the atom, nuclear weapons probably the largest. Computers, rockets, radar, the jet engine. It goes on from there. Antibiotics came out around that time. So that's why many people think that that's the time when sightings of UFOs skyrocketed. It's the twofold, the technology and the violence. If we were a peaceful species, maybe we wouldn't be cause for too much concern. So if you found, let's say, a tribe somewhere in the Amazon rainforest, and they just developed rifles or muskets or some type of weaponry, and they were extremely aggressive, and they killed each other.
Here's an analogy: North Korea currently
Yeah.
developing nuclear
On
weapons.
that topic.
Yeah.
Right.
So speaking of Roswell, the thing that always kind of puzzled me, which made me research it, was why would aliens be flying around in Roswell? Look at the globe. What are the most remote areas if you wanted to hide? The Pacific, the bottom of the ocean, over the Himalayas. Wouldn't you be maybe near some important military installation like, I don't know, Lackland Air Force Base or something where there's technology? Why would you be in the middle of the desert? So what I found is that where was the first nuclear weapon created and tested was in New Mexico.
Right.
So that is something to me that kind of makes sense. Because if, for example, if it hadn't been Roswell, if it had been Barrows, Alaska, what's the significance of that area? I don't know. I'm sure you could come up with something. It's near the North Pole. It's where the Soviet Union and the United States are closest. A lot of Air Force traffic, whatever. But that's what I think. If the Roswell story is true, that craft maybe was observing the nuclear facility.
Well, also, isn't it true that at Roswell there was an airfield at Roswell, a military airfield, and the bombing group that was based there was the bombing group that supplied the aircraft for the first atomic bomb dropping on Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Ooh, the Enola Gay.
Was the number escapes me, but yes, that the home base was Roswell for that bombing group, and supposedly at the time that was the only bombing group in the world that was able to drop a nuclear weapon.
Right, and going back to a previous incarnation of this program, we did a whole episode on UFOs in the military, and one thing that's a common thread or a common theme amongst UFO sightings is that they do center around military installations.
Sure,
there's been some in this in our own country, obviously Roswell being one. There was a Nike missile site in Maine, where there was an important UFO sighting that occurred there. The Rendlesham Forest case in the UK, which is something that we could actually do a whole show upon.
Sure.
Which is one of the most documented UFO encounters in modern history, and that was also a nuclear weapons facility, a site there.
Well, a very quick observation that could stem out of that, as far as against alien activity, extraterrestrial activity, would be to say that yes, that there are a lot of sightings around military bases because that's where new weapons are tested, that's where new aircraft are tested, and something that may look completely foreign to you,
right,
as even as a member of the military, could be just a weapon that you haven't seen yet.
And going back to what Joe said, I think that they're observing us. I think they're interested in what we're doing. I think that it's even a possibility, and we can talk about this later, that we may even have been seeded intentionally by alien species on this planet. We may be an experiment of some kind.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So let's say you have a hamster. You got a hamster in a little cage. You brought him home from the pet store. You know, you're petting that little guy. His name's Bruce, and
Bruce the hamster.
he's cool. You know, and all of a sudden Bruce becomes self-aware, and he starts finding ways to escape his cage. And while you're gone, he's trying to break his way into your safe where you're keeping your guns, and he's figuring out how to use them and things. You're going to be very interested in that, and probably want to know what's going on there. So, so I get that concept of them wanting to see and observe what's going on.
Oh.
So, in terms of the Roswell case, what's your opinion on that? Do you feel as though that specific incident where supposedly a UFO crashed and we recovered it, is that the your belief that that's the narrative that we should go by?
I'm actually undecided about that. I try to keep an open mind. I mean, how many times in the course of history has someone come up with a theory, for example, the Earth orbits the sun, it's been ridiculed and shot down, and then we find out 100 years later that it was accurate. So you have to almost keep an open mind to everything. This UFO stories that I've heard that I completely dismiss. I think it's completely insane. But, I mean, I don't know enough about that particular incident. I actually almost intentionally didn't study that too much. I looked at other incidents that were a little less noticeable. I kind of think that's where maybe some of the answers lie. And But I think one of the things that made that famous is it was like the first one. You know, there's been cases since then. It's almost like gotten a little old. It's almost like, you know, maybe a band that has a one-hit wonder and gets all the attention, and then the songs they make moving forward gets a little less. So that was the first big incidents that, you know, was in the media that got everyone's attention. And then, you know, when it happened later on, it was like, you know, people had divided their opinions.
So here's my take on that, and I encapsulate Roswell amongst all supposed quote unquote recovered alien craft incidents, right? I just have a hard time wrapping my brain around, or even rectifying. Rectifying, is that the word? Or reconciling. What does rectify mean?
When you fix something.
Oh yeah, you fix it. Rectified. Oh, that makes sense. Reconciling.
Thank you.
That's
for that
the word I'm looking
special
for.
Little glimpse into your thesaurus.
I have a hard time reconciling the idea that aliens. We just talked about how much more advanced they are than us. That they can, traverse the great expanses of time and space, come here, observe us relatively undetected. But yet, when they travel here, and then suddenly they lose control of their craft and crash into the Earth.
Maybe it was a female driving.
Oh, could be. Female alien.
What happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We just alienated most of our.
I was gonna say,
most of our listeners.
I didn't hear what you said.
I find lady drivers to be the best, most aware drivers on the
best,
road.
The safest, the best.
Anyway, how could that be? I mean, I guess it's possible that at any, it still is a machine and they still are like biological beings. I guess they could fail. They're not perfect, but I find that hard to believe that they could do all that and have such great technology that all of a sudden they come into Arizona and they forget to put the brakes on, or New Mexico, and they crash into the desert. And then they let us recover their bodies and all that stuff. I have an issue with that.
You said bodies.
Body.
The body. Inside joke.
I didn't say toe.
You didn't say that yet.
I don't like the word toe.
You just said it, though.
Oh, damn, I did.
Well, anyway. So that's an interesting take on the Roswell thing. But throughout the past 70 years or so, there's been a number of cases that were considered, I guess, to be high profile or at least sensationalistic or whatever, what have you. Do we want to discuss a couple of those and see what everyone's opinion is?
I have
Sure.
the biggest one to talk about.
Yeah, what do you got? Go for it.
So, have you ever seen the movie Fire in the Sky?
As a matter of fact, yes.
I've seen that movie, yeah.
Now, the only thing I want to bring up before I talk about that movie at all is that the end scene where he meets the aliens, that was just for the film. That's not
That was not part of his account thing?
Exactly.
Okay.
That was made for the film because the film was supposed to scare people. I saw this movie, it was so scary, let's go see it.
That part was scary.
It was I was like 7 years old when the movie came out.
Right.
It was very frightening, but that's what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to scare you. Kind of, they wanted to make it like a sci-fi horror movie to make it interesting, and
Right.
that's exactly what happened.
And Hollywood does take liberties with stories.
Maybe the best thing to do would be to go back and say and so the Fire in the Sky movie, obviously, it's a very popular case, and it's about a man named Travis Walton. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how all this started.
I actually had the opportunity to speak to his cousin.
Oh.
And his cousin said that, he's the most normal guy in the world. And that kind of plays into this. So here's a man who had a family, who had no criminal record. He had a job. He wasn't in debt. No history of mental illness. Typical normal guy.
So like me.
Or I would say
Without
like
the
all
history of mental illness.
a little bit like all of us. Debatable. So they actually have said that this is the most credible case because he was with he was with 4 of his coworkers and at the same time
4 or 5, yeah.
This basic story goes they go out in the woods. They were loggers. They were going to cut down some trees, and then they saw.
This was in Arizona, correct?
Right, in the forest of Arizona. They saw a bright light. They thought it was a forest fire, but it was moving, so they go to investigate, and allegedly they see a craft, which I think maybe that ship was having a malfunction, if it's true. So apparently Travis runs out of the car, interested, wants to make first contact.
Which is what I do.
Right, makes
No,
the face.
it's not.
Makes the face. And he runs to this craft, and everyone's like, come back to the truck, let's get out of here. And then allegedly there's some bright light comes out of the ship, and Travis is knocked out, and then his friends get scared, and they drive away.
So they left him
Nice
there.
buddies.
Oh my God!
They were
He left their battle buddy behind.
Yeah,
that's wrong.
That's not cool.
They were never in the service like we were to have done that.
Not everyone's perfect.
So apparently then they go back, they compose themselves, and the ship is gone and Travis is gone. So what do you think they do? Most of these stories are after the fact. 2 weeks later, they'll go to the news or, like I said, Howard Stern, and they'll talk about what happened. And that's why these stories are not credible. But they do what all normal, sensible people would do, is that they contacted the authorities.
They called the police, right?
They called the police and
Right.
told them what happened. So
Which is not something you would think somebody would do if they were making something
Exactly.
up. Or,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So there was a legitimate investigation. They were, doing follow-up. They were checking the area. They were checking Travis's basement. Is he hiding in his basement? They're talking to his family members, his friends.
So they obviously automatically probably assumed that something nefarious had taken place, and these guys were concocting a story to cover up their crime, correct?
That's exactly what, of course, the small-town sheriff with the piece of straw in his mouth and the cowboy hat
And the
thought.
wheel gun. Yep.
I think that we would all think that. We would not think this story is credible. So allegedly they all, including Travis when he was found, they all passed lie detector tests. I don't know how accurate those tests were in the 70s, but that's credible too. So that's what makes this story a little different, is that there was an active investigation. They were searching the woods, they had bloodhounds, they had helicopters. It's not like he was hiding in his mom's basement trying to make some money. And on that topic, he declined to make profit from the story. That's the thing that raises, I kind of go, this is legitimate. Here's a guy that didn't make money off of his book and the film, which he could have, so... So then apparently all the times line up. I've even read that there was an Air Force airman nearby, about 10 miles away, who noticed a light, which was allegedly the ship, at the same time in the same location, and he reported it to his superior. So that adds up to the story as well.
So he was missing for about a week, right? He was missing for a few days.
I'd have to reference that.
And was found. So
where was he found? Was he found what kind of condition was he in? How far from the actual location that he went missing? Do we know all that stuff?
Well, I know of it depicted in the film, which I think would probably be a little exaggerated. In the film, he calls his friend from a payphone outside of a gas station. He's dehydrated. He's naked. He has strange bruises.
That's happened to me too, but it was a completely different
I was going to say, when I was
Spring
overseas,
break.
that happened to me several times.
Yeah, there was a few times.
Spring break, on leave.
Liberty.
I'm actually not positive about that. I've researched what he claims happened when he was on the ship.
Okay.
So we know that in the film it's this horror scene where they're chasing him around and they're doing experiments, and it's very frightening. And I'm happy that that's not what he said happened, because it's
That's sensationalistic.
That would be a little concerning. So what he claims to have happened, and actually I can find the clip. He wakes up in a white room, kind of like you'd see in the movies, and he sees 2 friendly-looking alien beings looking at him.
As friendly as they could look, I suppose.
They were just looking at him, so that makes me think maybe they gave him some medical attention or something. They were like, oh man, this guy got hurt by our ship.
Maybe they were attracted to him, and this was all part of a prelude.
Oh.
Like a foreplay.
Now, did they probe him at all?
Sounds
Because that's what I'm
sexy.
interested in.
Right, so according to his account, he woke up, and essentially nothing happened. He woke up and he saw them, so he was obviously a little shocked. And he was scared, and he said, get away from me, put his hands up like he wanted to fight. And they allegedly put their hands up, as I'm showing you 2 gentlemen.
This is radio; they can't see that.
Yeah, he's explaining.
They put their hands up in front of them, hey, we're going to leave you alone.
Yep.
And they did leave him alone. So, to go down the rabbit hole, did they do what he asked?
Well, I can see already if they meant him harm, he's not getting off the ship.
Exactly.
I mean, if he's going to be physically aggressive to them, and they're just going to take care of him,
They're going to phaser him. Or
right?
whatever.
You know, phasers set to stun, man.
Oh yeah,
You know,
Set your phasers to fun.
set your. That was a good one.
they had a party.
So
in the
anyway,
ship.
so they find him a few days later. He's dehydrated. He's naked, which I think is the most important part of the story.
Yep.
And to your point, so his version of events is kind of lame. So
Exactly,
basically, there's nothing really there. He just says, "I don't remember much, but you know, I was on the ship. I saw the aliens, and then I woke up here." So obviously that story doesn't sell real well. So they created this movie and this.
Is it possible that he was abducted by some backwoods Arizona
That's possible.
hillbillies, and they took him on an LSD laced adventure?
Well, you know what's
that
funny?
He barely remembers.
If there weren't 5 other witnesses, that's probably what people would think. But there were 5 other people who saw.
Let me ask you this, Joe. What did the witnesses say they saw? They just saw a light and a beam of light coming down, or did they see an actual object in the sky?
They described it as a ship. I don't kind of like a saucer, I think. So I mean, I've actually always wanted to try to pull the police report, but I'm almost like, plug that in, you might get flagged or something. Who knows? I don't know.
You're on a list already, man.
Yeah, I know.
They already know who we are.
We're already listening. So, so the other interesting thing that he said, that happened to him on that ship is that he encountered humans. He described them as nomads. They almost look like Vikings. And so of course he goes up to them concerned, like, hey, you recognize people, like, what's going on? Where are we? And then that's when he says he fell asleep or whatever, and then he woke up and he was back on Earth. So that wasn't depicted in the film,
right?
Which I think is interesting. Like,
why would they leave that out? That's a pretty interesting thing.
Is that a different species of human, or are there humans that work with them, or like the seeding factor,
right?
Or what?
I think it's maybe they picked up humans along the way, and some humans may not like the current situation that they're in on Earth, and they say, "Hey, this is really cool up here."
Well, in the film,
let's hang out.
In the film, and to your point, it's not at all like his real account. But there was pods that people were being stored in, and there was dead people in there, and it was like body parts floating about,
dissections.
Yeah, so obviously. Completely different version.
Yeah, and that's the part of Hollywood that discredits actual stories, because people think that's how it went down, and they look at this guy like he's a psychopath.
Right.
When really that's not how it was at all, unfortunately. So I think what we're going to do here is we're about halfway through the program. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to play a little musical number.
Musical interlude?
So actually, before we take a break, let me introduce it. So as I was speaking earlier about the up and coming bands that we like to promote here on the show, there's a band that my friend Brent here has introduced me to, and they're called White Fuzzy Bloodbath.
Nice.
Which is an interesting name, to say the least.
Name.
They're based out of California, and I'll talk a little bit more about the band here in a minute, but I'm going to play a short clip from one of their songs. It's called Gnaw, and we're going to let that play, and we'll talk more about it here in a minute. So stand by. All right, that was a little clip from a band called White Fuzzy Bloodbath.
Nice.
Yeah, they're out of the Bay Area in California.
Out of where?
The Bay Area.
Oh, the Bay Area.
I'm assuming
I thought
San
you said
Francisco.
the Bear. They're from the Bear.
Well, California is the bear state,
bear
right?
state.
The bear animal is the animal of animals.
Yes.
State animal
so they
of
are from the
California.
Bay Area.
So that's Miss Elise on bass and vocal, and then you have Mr. Brock there on the drums.
Nice.
He can really pound those skins.
The Brock.
And then Mr. Dave on guitar and vocals.
Nice.
So we appreciate the fact that they like the Eon Project.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we'll promote them any way we can.
Sure.
We enjoyed that song, and we look forward to more music from them. And if you want more information about where they are and what they're doing, they play live like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah?
Like nobody's business.
Can you find them on the web?
You can. I believe it's whitefuzzybloodbath.com.
Well, that's a pretty distinctive website.
And you can get on there. You can learn all about them, and you can find more information where they're playing, what they're doing, and listen to some of their music and check them out.
Well, cool.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, during the break there, you bumped the microphone with your head.
I did.
And I don't think it was recorded, but it actually reminded me of something, and I want to discuss it real quickly because it explains a lot. So you sustained a very serious head injury.
I did.
At the hands of an enormous man.
Yep.
And I was witness to it. And to this day, I'm surprised that there were no lasting effects. But now I'm starting to think that maybe
I had the unpleasant...
took quite the blow.
The unpleasant experience of getting my head smashed off the side of a Humvee one time.
Why don't you explain that?
I will. So when I was in my in the days back in the military, I was in MOS school actually, which for you non-military folks out there is military occupational specialty. So whatever your job is, you have a certain designation.
You go to the school.
You go to school for it. So I'm in school, and of course I'm young at the time. I think I was like 19, so I'm full of piss and vinegar, if you will. And we're getting our period of instruction on the Humvee.
Yes.
We're learning all about the Humvee. We're learning how to drive the Humvee, learning all about it, learning how to PMCS the Humvee, right?
Yes.
And preventive maintenance checks and services, all that good stuff.
Yep.
So we went on a convoy. We're in a convoy.
We got a convoy
through the very difficult terrain of the backwoods of Anniston, Alabama.
Oh,
yes.
The Deep South.
The Deep South.
I've served there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't it a nice place?
What a pit.
Where the rednecks are
also home to chemical school.
used to be, yeah.
So we used to run through clouds of suspicious chemicals.
We did.
Not knowing what they
were. We were poisoned.
Yeah.
And the strip clubs are quite interesting down there as well, I might add.
Interesting places.
So anyway, we're on this convoy, and we for some reason, whoever was leading the convoy in our class decided to deviate from the path. They went off into the tree line, into the woods, and started running the Humvee through some random obstacle course that was not sanctioned by the military.
Unauthorized obstacle
Unauthorized.
course. Wow.
Through wilderness, through pits, through dirt, through clay, through mud. And so what do?
You got in trouble.
We all followed.
Oh.
Yeah, the whole convoy went through.
Classic.
Yes.
Nice.
So when we get to our destination,
clearly it's your fault.
needless to say, the class advisor, our class leader, who was a staff sergeant, as I mentioned, Staff Sergeant Villarubia, who in a previous incarnation was a drill instructor.
You know what? One of the scariest people I've ever seen in my life.
In that regard,
guy.
he was not a kind man, to say the
not.
least.
No.
He was angry, and he was big,
Scary.
and strong, and I was just a little, peon, to say the least.
So what happened?
So he was pissed.
Yep.
So we got to our destination. We all he yelled at everybody to get out of the Humvees. We all got into formation. And so every Humvee, or not every Humvee, but every fifth vehicle had a giant 5-gallon water container. Right? A big water jug that they were responsible for. And my fire team had the Humvee that was responsible for the water container.
You were the water guys.
We were. And so already he was mad. He was yelling at everyone.
He was mad when he woke up in the morning.
His face was red,
Yeah.
and he was screaming. So he wanted to know, aside from dressing us down for going unauthorized through the mud pits, he wanted to know who had the 5-gallon jug in their vehicle. And because he wanted to count everybody off.
He wanted to count.
So he said, everybody raise your hands, and if you have a jug in your vehicle. So he started counting, and then as he was counting people, they were putting their hands down.
Well, he said, no. He said,
No.
When he counts you, put your hand down.
That's not what
I
happened.
was standing right there.
No.
That's what he said, and you didn't listen.
No, I put my hand down. But then he yelled at everybody to put their hands back up.
You're remembering.
So he took him like 10 times to recount.
Because of you.
And then finally, he had enough. He got to me, and apparently I wasn't paying attention. I put my hand down once again. Next thing I know, he looks at me with these piercing eyes that looked like lightning bolts out of Satan's bunghole. And he was coming at me full force.
He parted the ways.
He parted the 3 ranks in front of me, and I didn't know who he was going after, but he was going after me.
He's coming for you, man.
He double fist clenched me around the esophagus and pushed me back about 10 meters, actually.
Yep.
Feet, meters? No, they're not close.
You can say feet.
10 feet. And smashed the back of my cranium up against the side of a Humvee and started to choke me out. My eyes were bulging out of my head.
And everyone thought you were dead.
Nobody did anything to help me.
That guy was scary, man.
Nobody.
No.
They all watched me get choked within an inch of my life.
Nobody wanted to be next.
And he was whispering in my ear the whole time saying that I was going to die.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, I don't know why, he let me go.
And we probably had visions of Leavenworth dancing in his head.
He let me go. I collapsed to the ground, picked up my 5-gallon water jug, which I had with me the whole time, and got back in formation, and nobody said anything ever again. And
that was it.
This training went on like nothing happened.
Well, you got your punishment. You almost died.
I did. He used to hit people a lot.
Yeah. There was a lot of hitting that, and that's the thing. And everyone here has been in the military. A lot of people who listen to the show have been in the military, but many have not. And it's become commonplace to think that those days are in the past, that doesn't happen. It still happens. That happens.
I remember him, I think it was PFC Nelson that was in our platoon, that we were on a formation run, he kept falling out, and he punched him square in the heart.
Hey, you know what? That's motivation.
He collapsed his heart. It stopped for a split second, and then it restarted.
Jump-started him.
And then he kept running. So
somehow he found the courage to keep going.
I don't know where Staff Sergeant Villaruby is to this day.
Well,
I hope he's alive. I hope he's doing well.
I hope he's well.
I miss you, sir, and I love you.
Anyway, so we've been discussing aliens from an anthropological standpoint as far as extraterrestrials and how they may be studying us, what they may be wanting.
Right.
And I think what we're going to do now is we're going to delve a little bit more into some possible theories as to the state of extraterrestrial life in our universe.
Sure. Do you have anything intelligent to add, Joe, about what your theories may be in terms of the intelligence out there?
Not in this room, but outside of the into the cosmos.
Yes.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit is the Drake equation. So in the early 60s, a scientist named Drake came up with he basically made up a formula to determine how many intelligent species there are in the galaxy. And he did all this math as the rate of star development, planets that can evolve life, etc. So he came up with a rough number of about 10,000. And apparently the math holds up today.
In the galaxy or the universe?
The galaxy.
Okay.
10,000 in our galaxy alone.
But I mean, how many stars are there in the galaxy?
At least 100 billion we talked about earlier.
So if you do the math, that's not that...
Not very common.
Exactly. And then with the vast distances, as I said earlier during the break, that the Earth's sphere of influence is about 100 light years. Where that number comes from is that how long have we been transmitting radio signals and how far have they gone? So if you're in a alien spaceship with a big satellite dish and you're listening to everything, you have to be within 100 light years to listen to anything that we've transmitted. So that's not very far, considering that they estimate that the universe is 93 billion light years across. So if you made that into a fraction, we really haven't, broadcasted ourselves very much.
You know what's really scary? About 9 years ago, Jason and I had a radio program on AM radio. And it's very scary to know that the words that we have spoke then are now making their way into neighboring solar systems and galaxies.
They're traversing the expanses of the
and
multiverse.
They may now be listening to us as we speak.
That's correct.
That's one of the most scary things. It's going to keep me up at night.
And to talk a little bit about that is, there's the... Actually, I think it's correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a government-sponsored but privately funded endeavor, which is the SETI project, which is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And I appreciate the fact that they're out there. What SETI is there's a number of radio satellites around the Earth, and they're sending out certain signals out into the ether, hoping to either elicit a response from another intelligent civilization or to capture something from one of these civilizations. The only problem is that they're very narrow-minded in their approach, I believe, because they're sending out radio signals in a very specific band, because they think, if there's aliens out there, then they're only going to be operating in this particular band. How would you know that?
No, you wouldn't.
Well, the theory to that is that they listen and broadcast to the frequency of hydrogen,
correct,
and water.
Yep.
Because hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe that we think. I'm sure that's true.
Right.
And water, being that water, is conducive to life, so that's why they picked that.
At least the life on our planet.
Exactly.
That doesn't necessarily mean that's necessary.
It could mean nothing outside.
Because we're a carbon-based life form here on Earth. But what's to say that they're out in the universe, that there's not another life form that's based on a different element of the periodic table?
Like silicon is what they think would be the second most common.
Imagine if there was a species that was only related to let's say, what's a cool element? What's a cool sounding element?
Well, what about plutonium?
Molybdenum. There's a molybdenum civilization, man.
Oh my God!
And they're all Molly and
weird looking.
Molly and bendiums.
They look a lot like you, except they may have appendages coming out of their forehead.
That may be sexy to them. Who knows?
Oh, that is
Be
hot.
sexy to hear. You know, you name a physical deformity. There's a fetish for it, man.
You tell me about it.
And there's probably some pornography for it. Not that I would
right.
know. But I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we were just not to dis-
In conclusion, we've solved every problem.
Yes, there we go. No, so the theory being that there's about 10,000, the Drake equation, that there's about 10,000 that are worlds that can sustain, or planets that can sustain life as far as we know it in our galaxy.
Yep.
So even if 1% of that is correct, that's 1,000 planets, correct? No,
100.
I'm sorry, 100 planets.
Yeah.
In our galaxy,
Right.
that can sustain life, and there's how many galaxies?
100 billion.
So, it's to me, it's irresponsible to believe that there is not life somewhere else. I mean, how could that possibly be? Which leads us to the next scientific equation, which would be the Fermi paradox, which I find to be interesting. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you're much more knowledgeable than I am, Joe. However, from what I understand of the Fermi paradox, is
Not pheromones.
no,
Because that's what I'm releasing right now.
you didn't shower.
I didn't. No.
So, according to the Fermi paradox, there are so many worlds that sustain life that we should have contacted them by now. Correct? So, it's a paradox in that if all these calculations are correct and they've been, held up by scientific standards, how come we haven't?
But who's to say we haven't, though?
Right.
There's no specific scientific proof that we haven't, but there's all this conjecture and, what's the word I'm looking for?
Hypothesis?
Hypotheses?
Well, the thing is,
Hypothesize.
and here's an interesting point, because we've kind of alluded to it a little bit. So let's say the governments of the world know that there's aliens and that we've been in contact with them. It's in their best interests to not acknowledge that, correct? That there's been
for their
alien
reasons,
contact.
sure.
But don't you think that so many people would have to know that by now it would have come out? It would have leaked.
Well, there are whistleblowers here and there, right? There are leaks, Joe.
Well, remember in Independence Day when the president didn't even know about it.
Yes, I remember that.
Plausible
true.
deniability.
I wouldn't tell Trump.
Well, that
Would
guy.
you?
No, well, Data was running that.
Data.
I
met him.
That lab. Oh, really?
You met Data?
At Comic-Con, yeah.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
you go to Comic-Cons?
I've been to one.
That's a lie.
No, I actually would be honest about that.
Okay.
I would brag. I've been to 3.
I've been to many Comic-Cons, and each time I've met Harley Quinn. Anyway, so the president might not even know, right? So this is something that's held at but people can't keep a secret about anything.
No.
Well, Stephen Hawking said that the government can't fix bridges or come up
No.
with health care.
Right.
So how would they keep a secret like that? They're doing a
Exactly.
better job at keeping that as a secret than they are, running public schools. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You know what? Not completely off topic. I just thought of this. I don't know
We
why.
don't go off topic on this show.
I
ever.
ran into a guy the other day. I heard about a guy, and his name. You know what his name was?
What?
Juan Guano.
Juan Guano.
I don't know. That sounds like
good
an
name.
interesting.
That's
it's
Juan to
interesting.
remember. I've used that joke once before.
That'd be
on
like
this program.
if we translated that to English, it'd be like John Poo, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about right.
Yeah. Anyway,
John Poo.
so one of the issues that I have too is this idea that somehow we've captured alien craft and beings, and we've been reverse engineering their technology.
talked about that.
Well,
I have an
okay.
issue with that.
No, well, you may have an issue with it, but Joe talked about it earlier. So
Yeah.
if that's not true, if we have not been able to reverse engineer anything, or we're not given the gift of technology by aliens, how do you explain the literal explosion of scientific advancements that took place right around the same time?
Because humans are smart and
Yes, but
humans
this
are
is-
advanced.
That may be the case, but in all of recorded history, there was never an increase at this level in the level of technology.
know about
Up
that.
until a certain point, right around that 1945, 46, 47, all of a sudden they start.
Well, it's the space age, man.
Yes, but how did that start?
Well, it happened.
Well, it happened, yes.
Well, that goes to say what we were talking about a few weeks back with the prevalence of this ancient aliens theory. Now, do I believe that aliens have been coming to the Earth since the dawn of civilization? I do believe that, but I don't think that they have been directly involved in the technology and advancements of humankind. The Egyptians built the pyramids. Would you not agree that that's a technological feat for a primitive people?
Well, I think we discussed this on the show previously, where it's giving our ancestors a disservice, doing them a disservice by not giving them the proper credit, because there is there is proof that they had advanced technologies and stuff that was lost to history that we just maybe not know how they did it.
Sure.
But they were able to perform these feats that supposedly we can't do even today.
But I would apply that to modern technology. I feel like there's advancements every day because there's smart people working around the clock.
So what happened during the long stretch between the early civilizations who had all this advanced technology? And I know we're kind of going off the rails of the topic.
Technology always advanced, though, from the dawn of civilization.
Well, that may be the case in certain pockets, but there was wide swaths of the earth that didn't progress. The Dark Ages and the Middle Ages.
Yeah, but there's still civilizations that we talked earlier about, tribes in the rainforests of South America that's,
they don't
live
have
in dung huts. Oh no, that's Africa. Sorry, but they
live in poop huts.
They live in the Dark Ages, so to speak, in terms of their technology. They have very rudimentary tools. They live in in the woods, and they know nothing about the modern technology of mankind today. So there's always that gap between primitive tribes and modern humans.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should give Joe a little bit more because we've been kind of taken over a little bit. But I think, is there any type of? Well, I mean, what are your conclusions? Because we're drawing towards the end of the program here. What are your conclusions about your personal belief? Maybe you don't have a scientific background or scientific evidence to prove one way or the other. But what do you think? What do you think is the case as far as alien civilizations?
I think the most important thing to do in life is to keep an open mind. As soon as you think you have it figured out, I mean, as I said earlier, how many times in history have people come up with theories that have been right, and right away they've been dismissed? Like, the Earth doesn't orbit the sun, the Earth is flat. I mean, it's gone on forever.
It's still going on.
Exactly. Keep an open mind. Anything's possible. I always say, if you brought back the best scientific minds from 2,000 years ago and put them here today, they would not be able to comprehend things like the internet or a Boeing 747. So who knows? In 1,000 years and 10,000 years, we'll look back onto the early 2000s and they'll be like, wow, they didn't have a clue about, they didn't even know about the wormhole near Pluto.
Right.
They didn't know how to, travel the speed of light. So.
And Betty White will still be around.
She will.
She'll be younger.
She could be telling, yes.
She's going to go through the wormhole.
She's
She'll be
Benjamin
younger.
Button. She's reaching that. She's going to start going down in age at this
Tell you
point.
what, if she's still alive when I'm 100, she better look out.
Well, anyway,
Nice.
she's an attractive older lady, eh?
She is.
So the key takeaway from all of this discussion is that we don't know.
We don't know, and like Joe just said, and that's my problem with mainstream science is the fact that they think they have all the answers, or they're so confident that they have all the answers, but they don't. And there's going to be things 100 years from now that they're going to look back upon and say, "Oh my God, how did we ever think that was what our beliefs were?"
And just to prove, I mean, when you watch, they have what's very popular recently is those shows that how the universe works and through the wormhole and things like that. So you hear these theoretical physicists talk about, well, this is how it is in these distant. They have no idea.
No idea.
They're just guessing, really. I mean, maybe they're educated guesses and maybe they're smarter than you and I.
Yeah.
Maybe, probably, but that doesn't mean that they're right. And for them, as you said, what's right today is going to be wrong tomorrow.
That's correct.
So,
Any parting thoughts, Joe?
Unless you have any specific questions or topics. I know you talked about the steady incline of technology and how there's been times where that hasn't been so true.
Right.
Familiar with the burning of the Library of Alexandria?
Oh, yeah.
That
Yep.
set us back who knows how much. So
somebody left a toaster oven going, I believe.
You know
what that was? It was a hot pocket in there.
The Hot Pockets can be deadly.
Well,
Not only the
they
Hot
burn
Pockets,
the
but
roof
like
of your
the
mouth.
Tostitos pizza rolls or whatever.
Oh, those are like lava.
Oh my
There's
God!
lava in there.
There's a warning on the label, but the warning is clearly not.
It's not sufficient.
It's not strict enough.
No.
Because you put the Hot Pocket in the microwave, you take it out, the crust is still cool to the touch, and you're like, oh, this is okay to eat. You pop the whole thing in your mouth. Next thing you know, there's a nuclear explosion, hydrogen bomb going off on your palate. You're burning yourself, 72-degree burns in your mouth. Your tongue's
72
falling
degrees.
out. Oh my God, it's terrible.
Well, you're supposed to you don't just dive in and eat the whole thing. You got to
What are you supposed to
bites
do?
out of it.
Take a bite out of a Hot Pocket? Not a Hot Pocket, but a pizza roll.
You put the whole hot pocket in your mouth at the same time.
No, not a Hot Pocket.
You
a
must be
pizza
some
roll.
kind of star.
A pizza roll. It's an appetizer. It's a bite. It's a little bite. It's a
pizza
nugget.
roll.
It's a little nugget you just pop in there.
So some poor Greek guy was walking around trying to heat up his hot pocket and burn down the Library of Alexandria and curse the world to thousands of years of darkness.
He did.
what about,
Unbelievable.
What about the new m.r.e. Pizza.
Oh,
let's talk about
why don't you
that.
tell me a little bit about that? So
I'd
we've
like to know
we've
about
partaken in MREs over the course of
yeah.
Yes.
my military career, and my favorite was the ham slice. I don't even know if they have the ham slice anymore.
Ugh.
Nasty.
But every day they're coming up with new and interesting innovations.
For our fighting men and women.
So apparently Joe has partaken in a recent experiment when it comes to the MRE. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and what it was like for you?
I think we were coming back from the field, and we had a formation that Army Natick Science Labs, which is right near Fort Devens, was gonna. They were gonna force us to test the new MRE pizza flavor.
you're
Kind of like when they forced us to take anthrax. We didn't want to.
mandatory volunteer.
Yeah, exactly.
And there was a lot of people that didn't want to do it, including a master sergeant. It's like, I'm not going to do it. And it's like, apparently we've been ordered
That's it. I'm not doing
to
it.
do this. We're like, we have to,
I'm going to jail because I refuse to eat a pizza.
89 soldiers have to do the taste test. And they had us fill out a survey, and they told us.
And a waiver.
Anytime they make you
yeah.
sign anything, that's
Yeah.
always a warning sign.
They're like, and no talking, because we don't want you to talk about like which flavor you like and don't like. We're all like, yeah,
my God.
okay.
do you have to report any side effects that you may have incurred?
So we're eating it, and then like, so an hour later, and we're like, nah, how do you feel? I'm like, I don't know. I don't
How do
know
you
to
feel?
I feel lightheaded.
I don't know how to feel.
You got all these scientists looking at you going, and they got clipboards and like, oh, let's watch this guy.
He's like, he's breaking out. He's turning green.
Radiation. But it was
So,
good. It
so
tasted.
what flavors did you have?
I had a new type of bread, I guess, which was awful.
Oh, not the shelf
stable.
Shelf
yeah,
stable.
It was the
Yeah,
it
shelf
was
stable.
like the wheat snack bread, and then
Oh,
and then
getting fancy.
the actual pizza, which was I didn't heat it up. I've never since OCS I have not heated up an MRE.
Okay.
Them all cold, but it was not.
That's hardcore, man.
Yeah, damn right.
Yeah.
Takes too much time, you know.
Yep.
So I've eaten every MRE cold since I've commissioned.
Oh.
And so I ate the pizza cold. That's what I, just to save time, and it wasn't bad.
Was it a square pizza or a triangular pizza?
It was square, and like
Oh.
someone said, like when you're eating an MRE, you have to think like I'm out in the field, I'm hungry, I'm tired.
Doesn't matter. I'm just gonna eat it.
Exactly. So I rated it pretty good. You know,
So it was just a cheese pizza?
I tasted like if you bought like a microwave pizza from the gas station and you ate it like 3 a.m, like this is pretty good. This is
Especially if
That's
you've had
not
a few
hy-
beers.
That's not a
Exact-
hypothetical. That happens.
yeah, there you go. That's
yeah.
how I based it. So
You know, I'm wondering if they still can, because it's been a while since I've had an MRE. Do they still include the what we refer to as the the official title was an oatmeal cookie, but we called it oatmeal butt plug because if you ate it,
Yes.
you didn't go to the bathroom for about 3 days.
That's
how about
right.
the cheese? Whenever you have
The
any-
cheese, yeah,
Oh,
the cheese.
the
spread.
cheese was
MRE
a hot
cheese.
item. Everybody was trying to trade
Gotta
for
get
the
that
cheese.
cheese, man. It
Tried-
came with the ham slice one.
I tried to get to get rid of the peanut butter and trade for the cheese. Nobody wanted that.
My experience was the opposit. Everyone wanted the peanut butter and to ditch.
Really?
The yeah.
Oh no.
Oh man.
Times have changed.
Yeah,
man.
we're all
You know, it's funny because
millennials.
you get the when I first got exposed to the MRE, there was no heater involved.
No,
But then they started
that
giving
was a new thing,
They started
yeah.
giving us a heater,
Yep.
but then they took it away when they realized we could make IEDs out of
Yeah.
it.
Yep, people were making IEDs out of it.
And it says right in the instructions, heat it up, like lean it against
Rock
a rock
or something. Rock or something.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
Oh.
So that was a good program.
Well, you know what? We talked a lot about, and this was more like a theoretical show, which we haven't
It
really
was,
done.
yeah.
We haven't done too much of that theoretical discussion, which I thought was pretty interesting. We had a knowledgeable guest, which is always good.
Yeah.
Somebody who knows a lot more than you and I, which is not new.
He's got a good radio voice, you know. He
Yeah.
sounds good. He's deep. He's well spoken.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there was no whiskey imbibed on this show.
There was
so
no
it
whiskey today.
all
Although we'd like
sober.
to do another alcohol show.
You know what? The alcohol show that we did, the whiskey show, was very well received. It got
was?
some of the highest ratings that we've gotten so far.
It did.
Was for the whiskey.
You know what
show.
would have made this show even better if we had whiskey and talked about aliens. That would.
You know what?
Awesome.
Yeah, we should do that next time.
We will.
Oh. And then, well, before we end today, we want to give the website out. We've had a couple of additions to the website. We changed some stuff around. Actually, so if you go to TheEoNProject.com, that's TheEoNProject, TheEoNProject.com.
Yep.
You will be able to link to our social media pages. You can see what we're doing. And actually, we have our YouTube channel going, so you can actually see visualizations of our show. We're not on there yet.
Yeah, no, it's just like you don't see us per
No.
se, but you see like little wave files.
You
and
see a
things.
wave.
and then the show plays.
Yep.
Which some people like.
Yeah.
But
Good
you know
to
it
know
automatically uploads to that. So, but yeah, no, we'd like to thank Joe for his interest and knowledge
Yes,
in
thank
the
you.
subject of aliens. And and before we go, I wanted to mention this quickly because we talked about this a couple weeks ago. But you guys, Game of Thrones fans.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
You guys
Game of
watch
Thrones
Game of
fans,
Thrones. So and military guys as
Right.
well. So something I wanted to mention. Mike and I discussed before about the White Walkers,
Yes.
right, and how they're going to get around, get past the wall.
Yeah, walk around it.
So apparently George R.R. Martin, right?
Yes.
Is the guy that does the Fire and Ice. He does the he's
Yeah.
the originator
Yep.
of the Game
He's
of
the
Thrones
author,
story.
yep.
So apparently he's very much interested in military history. He loses a lot of historical events in his stories and translates them into the fantastical world, so to
Okay.
speak. So we asked the question a few weeks back, how are the White Walkers going to get beyond the wall? Well, let me just ask you this, smart guys. How did the Germans penetrate the Maginot Line at the
can tell you
beginnings of World War II?
This is exactly how they did it. They went around it.
Then there was also a famous fixed fortification that they went right through. So
But the main idea was they went around the wall.
just went around the wall.
That's exactly what the White Walkers are going to do. They're going to go to the sea. The sea is going to be frozen over, and they're just basically going to walk around the end of the wall, and they're going to penetrate the southern regions of
I mean, so basically what we have is in the realm of Game of Thrones, they're relying on old technology, such as the French were prior to World War II, in construction of the Maginot Line.
Exactly.
So their technology is
Because the French were
flawed.
known for their very robust fortifications
Actually,
and their
their
smart
fortifications weren't that
military.
bad.
No, they were until they stopped at Belgium, and they said, "Oh, they're not.
No
gonna
one will go around.
Belgium's neutral. They're not going through Belgium."
There's no way.
They did. And
Nah, they
look what
did it
happened.
anyway.
Anyway,
remember what Patton said, that fixed fortifications are the monument to the stupidity of man.
Oh.
If man can overcome oceans and mountain ranges,
exactly.
Good quote right
anything that man builds can be overcome.
there. That's correct.
That makes sense.
Anyway.
Okay. Well, thanks.
Yes, great show.
Thank you,
Very
Joe.
interesting. Thank you,
Thank
Joe.
you, gentlemen.
All right.
And tune in next time where we will talk about something else that's
Something
really
else.
interesting.
Yeah, we're looking to do a three-part arc.
Got some pretty good guests coming up too.
Yep.
Besides today,
True.
We've got some interesting paranormal guests. We have a couple of those lined up, and some interesting shows coming up.
Absolutely. So just remember, until next time, the truth exists. Believe it.